Absolutely. Especially since we know that the wither flies and also destroys any block that it touches. Your best way to avoid a creature like this is going to be by digging down, far below where it can reasonably follow. Exactly what we find with the stronghold placement. In fact, it would explain why the only remaining structures from these ancient builders on the surface of the overworld are underwater monuments, underground mine shafts, and secluded desert temples. They're the only structures that the wither wasn't likely to touch and immediately destroy. And
that makes sense. That makes sense. But you know what is weird? Why did the wither never go after the villagers?
on that note, what's the key feature that exists inside the stronghold?
That's a good question.
It's the portal to the end. Now, we just established that the wither can destroy almost any block that it touches. Almost any block being the operative word there. There are very few exceptions to things that it can destroy. Those exceptions include bedrock, command blocks, extended pistons, and
what's a command block? I don't think I've ever seen one of those before.
end portal blocks and end portal frames. I don't know about you, but if my society is being decimated and I'm trapped in my underground bunker running away from this terrible beast that destroys everything it touches, I'm making sure that I'm building that last-ditch escape effort using supplies that are going to be wither-proof. We also can be sure that the wither was known by the ancient builders. If you look closely at the chiseled red sandstone that was used as decorations in ancient buildings like desert temples and underwater ruins, you'll notice a hieroglyphic that clearly depicts the wither. Straight body, 3 skeletal heads. So whoever created...
Yeah, so I think Matt's right. All of this is just evidence that, yeah, the wither obviously did scare the people off. And I've never fought the wither in Minecraft. Don't know if I want to. You know, I like a nice peaceful game.
These structures in the first place certainly knew that this thing existed. But how? Or maybe more importantly, why? Why would anyone intentionally try to summon this thing in the first place? Well, let's look at how it's built, shall we? The wither requires 2 very interesting ingredients in order to be summoned.
Total side note. Okay, wait. So if the people originally built everything because of the wither, they obviously had already spawned the wither, right? Well, where did the wither go if it was already spawned? Because the only way for you as a player to fight the wither means you have to spawn the wither. But if the people, like the past villagers, had already spawned the wither, shouldn't it still be around? Logically, it would still be around somewhere. But if you never spawn the wither, you never have to fight it. So by that logic, the wither doesn't actually exist until you summon it. Does that make sense?
First is soul sand, found throughout the nether. Sand that's relatively unremarkable in every way. Oh yeah, except for it being composed of the souls of the damned. It's well known at this point that if you look at the pattern on soul sand close enough, you'll notice...
Oh, it does look like there's faces in it.
Screaming faces staring right back at you.
That's creepy.
Look down a bit when you're walking across it, almost like the lost souls are pulling you down into them, violently getting you to join them. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is me talking about Minecraft. Kid-friendly, brand approved. So ingredient number 1, 4 cubic meters of damned souls. Check mark there. Secondly, you need 3 withered skeleton heads. But why these particular heads and not just any skeleton head? Well, to understand that, we need to find out what makes the wither skeleton so different from its brethren.
Well, I mean, one is darker than the other. That is about all I got.
You see, wither skeletons are exclusive to nether fortresses. This is worth noting because think about how crazy this is. We're basically in Minecraft's equivalent of HE double toothpicks, a world of ghasts and blazes, where everything is set on fire and nothing can build. Heck, most of the enemy spawns here don't even have arms, and yet somehow there are fortresses here.
Yeah, that is weird. What built the fortresses to begin with? Are we gonna get an individual video on that, Matt?
You see how tall these creatures are, the wither skeletons? Either Steve, compared to the ancient humans, either Steve is very short, or like the ancient builders are really tall. Because like if you notice, like if the ancient builders turned into Endermen, then that means ultimately they would become 3 blocks tall is the average. You know, that's for like every Enderman out there. But the wither skeletons are about like 2.5 blocks tall, I believe. So like almost 3 blocks. It's a little bit shorter than Enderman. So with that being said, either if the wither skeleton would be the skeleton of an ancient human, then either Steve is short or these ancient builders were pretty darn tall.
That are being supervised by large cursed skeletons. Fortresses, mind you, that contain chests full of gold and diamonds and iron, saddles and horse armor. All materials that aren't found down in the nether naturally. Supplies that...
So it must have been the people doing that, or building it, right? I guess you don't need to do an individual video on it if I can just solve it within 10 seconds of asking the question.
Had to have been brought down there and left by the original people who constructed these things in the first place. The End City chests function much the same way. And once you know it, they also contain the same sorts of loot. Iron and gold and diamonds and horse armor and saddles. Almost like it's the same people.
That's where you find saddles?
Flies from place to place. So using this information, let me tell you a little
You can also find them in
An ancient
temples.
race of builders descends into the nether to harvest its resources. They construct fortresses down there to defend against the hostile environment and store their supplies. But over time, as is natural, some of their ranks die. The nether is a dangerous and violent environment after all. So they bury their dead in the ground, but they don't realize that this place works differently than the overworld they're used to. What little soft ground there is actually sucks the soul out of the dead bodies, giving rise to soul sand, and leaving these bodies as just an undead husk of what they once...
Oh, that's weird. That's a cool theory, but it's creepy at the same time.
Makes
Or
sense.
it produces a wither skeleton, an aggressive, charred group of bones that, as an undead, lives on to complete the purpose it was given when it was alive: defend its fortress. Seeing all
That
that,
makes sense, though.
piece together an idea. If soul sand does indeed contain lost souls and somehow gives rise to the skeletons of the dead, maybe there's a way to combine the two and bring their dead friends back to life. These builders were a proud people.
That doesn't make sense. Why would they put 3 heads on it, though, right? Because even if, by that logic, even if they thought that it was going to work and bring their friends back to life, why would you want your friend to have 3 heads? That doesn't make sense.
I mean, they were builders, after all. Whatever they dreamed came into being from their very hands. They had conquered the earth, they had conquered the realms of heck. Now they would conquer the one thing impossible to any man: death. They would build life itself. I mean, with the raw materials, you can construct anything, right? Why not a lost human? You have the soul in the sand, you have the body in the wither skeleton. Why wouldn't it work? The last thing I'll call out here. You'll notice that...
Why would you put... I don't understand why you put 3 heads. If their logic was that it was gonna work, why would they put 3 heads on top of it?
None of the items in nether chests are enchanted, but by the time you get to the end, a lot.
Considering the fact that humans are, kind of curious creatures and in general, the way I can think of it is these ancient builders can create life. They can create iron golems. Literally people made out of iron walking around alive, thinking, maybe they're not as cognitive as other humans are, but they are able to create life. With that being said, they constructed, the soul sand and everything, just like the way they would an iron golem, just like how they normally create life. They put one head on, and nothing happened. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility to think that they kept adding heads to see if something would happen. Far-fetched? Maybe. But like I said, if it didn't work with 1 head, why not 2 or 3? See what that does. It may be a little bit of a leap of faith, but it ended up creating something. And they do know that this thing existed. Just saying.
Of them are. The reason I call this out is that it shows an escalation in the way these ancient builders started using magic. By the time they end their journey, in the end, they're full-blown magic users. They've started to go beyond just construction. They're starting to play with mystical forces. So, how does this story all work out? Well, it's a classic tale of hubris. The builders, having been to the fiery depths of heck,
Oh no, he said a bad word. Let's get him, everyone.
try to harness the ultimate resource, the power of life and death itself. They combine the soul and the body, the soul sand and the wither skeleton head, and it doesn't work. But by this point, they're obsessed. There has to be a way to make it work. Like so many other fictional characters before them, like Dr. Frankenstein, like the Elrics. They're convinced that they have the right ingredients, and so they start going down darker, more supernatural paths in their quest to crack the mystery. Magic, enchantment, potion.
So they created the wither. They didn't summon it. They just created the wither by using magic.
Maybe they go to the witches, already outcasts from society for their use of soul sand to concoct awkward potions and strange brews. And that's when they stumble upon it. They finally manage to create something, but it wasn't what they expected. Instead of bringing new life to a dead friend, they create a hideous and destructive beast. One out to punish them for tampering with the laws of nature itself. They make the Wither an unstoppable force. A beast
I like that. I like the this is a total side note, but I like I like what I'm seeing on screen. It looks cool. The visuals, I like it. I can't put thoughts into words today.
As we know, destroys the blocks that it touches and curses anything that gets in its way with decay. Gone overnight are the great buildings that this ancient race once constructed. The only things that remain standing are temples far out into the deserts, mine shafts hidden deep underground, monuments under the water. Gone are all the people of this once great society, one by one consumed by the Wither, a disease literally eating them away from the inside. Friends, neighbors, dead.
As I said earlier, it doesn't make sense that when you play Minecraft, the Wither doesn't exist. Like, it's not around. And the only point in the game which you will face the Wither is if you spawn the Wither. But if you're saying that the people had spawned the Wither originally, and that's what destroyed everything, by that logic, they wouldn't have actually bat the Wither, and the Wither should still be around, right? So, you shouldn't have to spawn the Wither for you to find the Wither, right? Like, the Wither should eventually be just found in nature in Minecraft, but I don't think that's the case. It's only if you spawn it. But if you're saying to people build these portals to the netherworld or to the end game to get away from the Wither should already be around and should already exist.
Decayed.
Maybe it despawned. I mean, you know, one of the Minecraft physics behind monsters and everything is that over time they will despawn. The only other thing I can think of is that the Wither actually withered away since it was so unstable. I mean, that doesn't make entirely a lick of sense because the Wither regains its health. So, but either it despawned or it withered away eventually. Or, you know, maybe somehow it died. I don't know. But that's the only that's the only thing I can think of.
Or worse, brought back to life in the form of skeletons and zombies, the living undead that roam the landscape to this day. So for their own protection, the remaining ancient people hide underground, deep underground, down near the bedrock in fortified bases called strongholds, far below where the flying Wither will be able to reach, with no trace of their existence on the surface. And it's there that they plan their escape. They've hopped to different realms before using portal technology. Why not again? But this time, the portal has to be made to be Wither-proof, which is why end portal blocks are literally the only block type outside of bedrock immune to the Wither's attacks. And from there, we know the rest. They managed to make the portal and hop to the end, but it's a one-way trip. They don't realize that the portal won't be accessible behind them, and what awaits them on the other side is something else, something completely unexpected, something that may have even been worse, the Ender Dragon. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory.
Well, that was interesting. I didn't really know much about the Wither at all before this video. I know very little, but now I know a whole lot more. I think the theory makes sense, because there's so much stuff to back it up, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense that the Wither doesn't exist until you spawn it. And if it doesn't exist before you spawn it, then how could it have been around to take out, like, the previous people? Does that make sense? Whatever. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video.
Well, that's the end of this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Make sure to also subscribe to Game Theory and Charmx for making these wonderful videos. And with that being said, I think the theory holds up for the most part. There is this, like, plot hole in which, you know, if it was created, then where did it go? But anyway, so with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.